Hello and welcome back to Talk of the White Lotus, the finale of Talk of the White Lotus, a mini-series from Talk of the Townsends where we talk about season 3 of the White Lotus. I said White Lotus a lot of times. I'm Benedict Townsend.
And I'm Hannah Townsend.
And we've made it, Hannah. We've made it all the way to the end.
We did it. Episode 8 of 8?
Possibly. It is commendable that we never truly learned at any point how many episodes there were, but now there's none.
Yeah, we're done.
So we're done. What's your gut reaction to the finale?
Here's what I think about the final episode. It was really exciting to watch, but I wasn't excited. I feel like Abby from Love on the Spectrum said it best when she was like, that's interesting, but I'm not interested. Really enjoyed watching it. I felt excited. I was loving watching it, but I came away and I was like, okay.
Really?
Yeah, a little bit.
Do you think that we partially ruined it for ourselves by doing this show where we overanalyze it to such a degree that we could then predict stuff? Do you know what I mean? Do you think if we had watched it more casually, we would have enjoyed it more?
I actually don't think that. I have been toying with the idea and the question, do you think we're getting better at understanding Mike White's writing, or do you think the series was actually just too clearly signposted? Because Chelsea dying, the fruit poisoning, the shooting, there were a lot of things that were quite obvious and that were set up for a long time, and then they happened. I mean, I'd say the one big surprise was Belinda, and that was so fun, but which one do you think it is?
I was surprised by the Rick's dad thing. I actually didn't see that coming. You brushed that off like it was nothing. I think they maybe could have revealed it in a slightly more exciting way. I would have liked him to have just gone like, oh, son, before he died or something.
It's such a classic trope, though, that's like, he was really your father all along. And we didn't dwell on it. It didn't go anywhere. It was a quite anticlimactic reveal in my eyes. And I thought, why mention it if we're not going to, like, revel in it?
But it's interesting, like, what our expectations are. I've said this before of, like, was White Lotus ever a twists show? Like season 1, which everyone loved, it wasn't really a twist show. There was maybe like one twist, which is who's going to get murdered. It was only season 2 where they introduced the gays are trying to murder me, that suddenly we had twists and turns. But like everyone was going into season 3 treating it like a proper like Agatha Christie mystery. But maybe it's not that show. Maybe it's never presented itself as that show. I know that there certainly were lots of threads and mysteries and red herrings in this season, but like rather than them, I'm just playing devil's advocate, rather than them being obvious writing, maybe it was just meant to be, I've set up A and then B happens. And that's just a thread.
I partly agree with you, but then I think if it is all about the characters, why did we not see the others' reactions to Chelsea's death? Where was Saxon reacting to Chelsea's death? Where was the family? I wanted to know more about them finding out about the dad's scandal and what was and the impact of that. I felt like, and the dad, the Rick dad reveal, let's understand more. If it's not a twisty-turny show, I wanted to see these storylines play out in their fullest.
Sure.
And I didn't feel I got that.
I do agree with you to a degree, but I think some characters got more fulfilling payoffs than others. I think maybe there was a little bit of rushing happening here and there.
Do you think there was a scene cut of Chloe and Saxon finding out about Chelsea dying, or it just wasn't important?
I think there's probably some deliberateness behind the fact that Chloe is just carrying on as normal. And, the last we see of her, she's just arranging a little
party.
Well, I was going to say threesome, but it's not quite that. I think that kind of shows like she's pretty vapid and she's pretty uncaring. And, I think that does say something. I think Saxon, I agree. Saxon actually had quite a connection with Chelsea near the end. So it was weird we didn't see him having some kind of reaction to that.
And again, with the father's storyline, why did we not find them? Did you feel it concluded well? Him just saying things are going to change, but we're going to be okay.
Well, that's why we need to go back to the beginning and delve through this, because there's a lot of poisoned fruit to chew through. So let's do it chronologically.
I feel like people weren't asking enough questions at the top of this episode. Gaytok said to Mook, I know who did the robbery. And she just smiled and was like, you going to do something about it? My first question, who?
Yeah.
Who did it?
What's the goss? Give me the goss.
Why would you not ask?
You were complaining about that throughout this episode, I think justifiably.
Yeah.
Because there is a degree of like, okay, yes, people in TV shows don't talk like people in real life because it would be annoying and it would just be too much dialogue. But there was a lot of times in this episode where people would say very intriguing things and no one would have follow-up questions.
Yeah.
Like, for example, who did the dramatic robbery? That's probably the most exciting thing that's happened at my place of work in 10 years.
Ever.
Yeah, ever.
It's probably, it's the most exciting. I mean, a robbery, an armed robbery is like most people's, that would be like a life-defining moment.
Yeah.
As if we're not going to say who did it.
Also, now that the dust has settled, Mook wasn't involved. Mook actually had a very small part.
The more I thought about it, the more I thought Mook and Lisa as this big megastar, I don't think was going to take the role of a part she is beloved that would have been a quote unquote bad character or a character that had done something wrong or stolen or be part of a jewelry heist. Like, as I thought this for a couple of episodes now, and I was like, I don't think her team would have let her take that role.
That's interesting.
So I wasn't surprised when Mook actually wasn't part of it.
Yeah, I can see that. But I'm just surprised that Mook didn't have... I mean, I guess it makes sense. Like, we've talked about this before, but Lisa is obviously unbelievably famous.
106 million followers, is it?
We can never not mention that because that is insane. But so it makes sense that she wouldn't take on a really, really meaty role just in terms of the sheer time it would take.
Yeah.
But I kept thinking that she would have something more significant to do in the last episode just because she is a huge name. But maybe, fair play to her.
But you have to agree. Sorry, I don't know. You don't have to agree with me, but like... people like that have big protection around like what roles they would and wouldn't take.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. Especially if you have like a very young fan base. But I just, fair play to her because I think this is her first acting role.
Well, that's another point. Yeah. If she's not an actress, so she's not known, if she was some sort of evil villain.
You will not let me make this point. For the last time, fair play to her.
106 million followers.
For the last time, fair play to her. I think it was her first acting role and she's doing it properly. She's starting with a small role and she's working her way up. Like she's not putting I'm the world's most famous person, I demand to be the lead. I commend that. And that's all I wanted to say.
Sorry, she was also very good in it.
She was really good, actually. She was very natural.
So we then had a nice scene between Laurie and Jacqueline where she said, I really want to be your friend.
I really liked how simple that line was. Sometimes really simple lines that almost seem too simple can actually be the most touching or the most heartbreaking of just like, I want to be your friend.
Yeah.
Like when an adult saying that to another adult, there is something like devastating and lovely about that. I thought it was a really nice line.
Yeah, the women's friendship and their storyline was my favourite, I think, of all the storylines. Laurie saying to the girls at the dinner, I'm glad you have a beautiful face and I'm glad you have a beautiful life, was so interesting because, those things aren't necessarily true. Like Jacqueline doesn't necessarily even like her face. She feels old. Kate's life, there's clearly some holes in what's happening. And Laurie said, I'm just happy to be sat at the table. But she was like acknowledging that these women, that these are the things that they want or they want people to think that they have.
But also they're the things that she resents them for.
Yeah.
She's like, I resent you for being beautiful. I resent you for having a perfect life. But she's like, no, I'm going to let you have that. And I'm going to be happy for you that you have that.
Yeah.
I think they were by far the best written and most satisfying characters to watch.
Yes.
And they by far had the most, my new favorite word, holistic payoff. Like they had a proper payoff with exactly enough screen time where you feel like everything was ticked off nicely.
Yeah,
I guess they were the leads of the show.
I was tearing up at that scene because I think between women, there's sometimes so much jealousy and people don't, they don't want to say things that are happening in their life that are bad. Whereas like female friendship thrives when you can say, actually, things are really shit. But, these women didn't spend loads of time with each other, which is obviously what we found out. And I think that like when you come together, you want to put on this shiny front. And I just thought that it was so well done. I think Laurie's speech was the best written. She says, as you get older, you have to justify your life choices. Being a mother didn't save me. My career didn't save me. I guess she was just someone who was a little bit lost and needed their friendship.
What was that line from the previous episode? When you always choose the short stick, basically them saying it's you, like you are the fault or whatever. And I feel like that's her kind of owning that in this. But I love that it had such a sweet conclusion because she started that speech going, I've been sad all week. And you thought she was kind of lay into them. And actually the twist of the show for me was that the girls got to have a really nice, sweet ending.
Yes.
I think we all fell in love with those characters because we're like, oh God, they're all at each other's throats. But it's actually a lovely twist that it's like, no, they are friends and they love each other and it's not perfect, but they want to be friends. And that was the most pleasant twist of all, I think.
Yeah, when they let down their guards between each other. And I think some people might disagree. They might say, oh, yeah, they're bitchy and they're not nice people and they don't really care. But I think that that's all just surface level because it's jealousy.
Yeah.
And I think women are always pinned up against each other. And sometimes when time passes where you haven't seen each other, that jealousy and that look of the other life looks so much better than yours, and you do, grow to resent or grow to hate them. Actually, as soon as you pull that down, there is a friendship there. The scenes of them drinking and hugging each other, I feel like teary even now.
I was tearing up.
I just thought it was so sweet.
Yes, I was tearing up, and I was like, wow, it's just like people being friends, but it's done really well. Like that hats off to Mike White. That was very, very well written.
They all just needed a friend in that moment, but no one was brave enough to say it.
I think those characters are so interesting because all the way through, I could never really predict where they were going to go. And I was always a bit surprised by where they went, but it always still felt correct. When she started doing that speech at the end, I was like, wow, that's not what I expected from Laurie. And yet, of course, like he really understands them as if they're real people. I can't imagine the difficulty of sitting down as a writer and writing characters like that.
The three of them had such a good chemistry. Whoever did that chemistry test nailed that because it worked. It worked in the bitchiness and it worked in the kindness, lovingness. It worked. Should we talk about Belinda quickly?
Let's talk about Belinda.
Belinda was wearing a super interesting outfit, right? It was the two parrots on the shoulder. And I was like, is that like an angel and a devil of what she's going to do, of which choice she's going to choose? Is she going to go with the 100K offer, go to the mansion, try and up the offer, or is she going to choose to walk away? Do you think there was something there, or do you think I'm overanalyzing the clothes a little too deeply?
I thought it was a little wild when you said it, but I really like it. There's like, Polly want a cracker. Polly doesn't want a cracker. That's a blood cracker. I love, not to skip ahead, but I love that Belinda got a goddamn win. I think she deserved a win. I like that she took the money. We screamed when it turned out that she was actually playing hardball in the negotiation.
That was the greatest twist. I loved it. That was so much. That twist was significantly better than it was your father all along. Come on. Belinda being a baddie and going for it was the best.
That was the most cathartic part of the episode by far.
The addition of her son and her son being like, we want a whiskey and we want 5 mil. Nicholas Duvenet saying, we've crunched the numbers, Greg, I think was my favourite line of the whole episode.
Talk about scene stealer, right? I know he's technically in a couple of episodes, but, people talked about Sam Rockwell's amazing monologue or whatever. Zion, her son, unbelievable. We saw a little peek of him in episode 1. We saw tiny snippets of him in the previous episodes. He killed it in this episode. So funny.
It's only 1%. I think you can give 1%, Greg.
I was convinced.
Screaming.
I was like, he's convinced me. Also, it was very funny, but believable. I could actually believe him as a real character.
Yeah, because he's studying and he's in business and he was like, we're ride or die until death or whatever if you sign this deal.
We'll ride or die for you, Greg, or something. Yeah. Also, I love that, it's because he's a kid. It's because he's young. He has the guts to do that.
Yeah.
Belinda would be like, that's insane. But because he's 20, he's like, fuck it, we'll do it. And that works.
Yeah. I was saying I'd take a whiskey at that house because that's going to be some nice whiskey.
Yeah, Greg loves whiskey.
Yeah, exactly. And then when Belinda got up to leave, I was like, no, Belinda, take the money.
Yeah, bloody morals.
Yeah. And then bluff, double bluff.
Yeah.
She was like, go close that deal. I quite like that as well, that we weren't shown him going back in. I don't feel like we did need to see that.
We didn't need that.
I think it worked.
Because also then later when we cut to just the computer showing $5 million, 5,012,000, I think it was, which is a nice touch because she obviously had 12,000 before. Bit of an upgrade.
And then we cut to them. There's a line between positive thinking and delusional thinking. And then Belinda checking her bank account.
I love that. What do you think I'm doing? I'm checking.
We need to go back and watch what Tanya said to Belinda when she left her high and dry.
Back in season 1.
Because I wouldn't be surprised if they copied almost the same script when Belinda left her love interest.
Yes.
And to be honest, I understand why she did that. And I don't feel sad that she did ditch him because I think realistically, she's a woman who's lived a life. She knows money changes absolutely everything. And I think it was a realistic thing to do. They'd only been seeing each other for a week. And you know, it was a bit of fun. Money changes everything, and Belinda has seen that firsthand. So I think her not running off into the sunset with him was smart, and she's a smart lady.
I mean, obviously you see that it's an inversion of what happened to her. But surely in that scene in season 1, Jennifer Coolidge could say the same thing. This is just some woman, Belinda, I've met at my hotel. I've only known her for a week. You know, I've just met this new man, Greg. Isn't it funny that both of them got entangled with Greg and then left behind a friend?
I think the thing that works with this is that in season 1, there was a huge power imbalance between Belinda and Tanya, right?
Yeah.
Tanya held all of the keys.
Yeah.
In this season, Belinda and her love interest, they started on similar footing, so it was equal. And then the scale tipped one way, and it was a complete imbalance, and she recognizes that imbalance, and I think that's why she walked away.
Yeah, but I still feel sorry for Ponchai because, you know, he had that little sad single tear moment at the end watching her leave. It is sad for him.
But you're not going to split 5 million with someone that you've met 5 days ago.
Yeah, but you could say the same thing about Jennifer Coolidge. Why would, you know, it is funny, but I do think don't get me wrong, I think she's a lot more justified than Jennifer Coolidge was. Because ultimately this was like a little holiday fling romance.
Exactly.
But it still sucks. And I almost kind of want him to come back and be the new Belinda.
I think this series of White Lotus had a take that we haven't seen before. Parker Posey saying, we've got this rich and this wealth. We may as well enjoy it. It would be offensive not to enjoy it. I think a lot of characters we've seen, they dwell on like, our life is still really hard. And actually, you know, we work so hard and there's not a lot of enjoyment in wealth.
Yes.
I really liked seeing that side.
That was a really classic White Lotus theme that we saw a lot in season 1 and season 2, and which we've seen less of here, which is these kind of uncomfortable ideas that Mike White will throw at you, where initially you're like, oh God, it's so annoying to hear her say that. But then also you're like, well, okay, what's more annoying than an ultra-wealthy person? An ultra-wealthy person who's complaining about being ultra-wealthy all the time. Like, if you have all that privilege, I guess you should enjoy it. And it's those kind of strange thought experiments that White Lotus is so great at making you have. It's that classic Mike White thing of like, no, I'm going to make you have the uncomfortable thought that maybe it is good that these rich people love being rich.
Yeah.
And there's no like hard right or wrong answer, because it's like, okay, the alternative is what Piper was doing, which is like, I'm going to be this like performative, self-loathing rich person, but that's like more annoying.
Yeah, and I'm taking a place in a temple of someone else, someone more, maybe slightly more deserving. I don't know.
I mean, obviously the best possible answer is that they like give some of that money away and help people, but like, because you know that's not an option.
I mean, Piper's storyline was all self-serving. It was all performative. It was never to help anyone but herself.
No.
So that's why when it did fall flat, you know, you're just like, yeah, maybe just enjoy the bag.
How do you feel about that storyline once it wrapped up? Like, I do think it was funny that she just immediately crumbled and was like, I think I like the creature comforts. I will say I basically saw it coming, but maybe that was the point.
It was interesting though, because I didn't see her as someone who loved this lavish lifestyle. So it felt a little bit strange for me. I don't know that...
Well, there was the fact that they came for her to go to the temple, and then she took days and days to go there. She spent a lot of the time just sitting around reading and going to the beach. As much as she might have complained about their lifestyle, she certainly lived it. She certainly had a lot of fruit at breakfast.
Yes. My second favourite line of this series was Pam saying, have a great last day.
I love Pam. That's a great underrated character. I wish we could have seen more of Pam.
Yeah, I agree. Let's talk about the family then.
She also had a line I love where she was like, the locals call it a suicide tree because people use it to kill themselves. It's one of those like it's funny how much she's over explaining that. It's like, yeah, I think we could put those pieces together, Pam.
Yes.
But look, Hannah, at the end of the day, sometimes you need to murder your entire family. And sometimes people keep getting in the way. But Tim, I'll tell you what, he's resourceful.
Yeah.
And he's a chef.
A pina colada.
If you like pina colada and getting murdered by your dad...
So we saw Lachlan say, I'm a people pleaser.
Oh, yes. I forgot they addressed that whole thing. I was quite surprised how outward he was about it. Like he hadn't forgotten any of it. He hadn't buried any of it. He was like, yeah, I did it. I'm a people pleaser.
I think in order to move past it, you would have to acknowledge that it did happen.
It did leave me with a lot more questions than answers. Like at the end of the show, I still don't really know what to make of him.
And their dynamic.
Yeah.
I think he could have died.
I kind of would have preferred if he died.
Yeah, I think, unfortunately, Lachlan probably should have died.
I did think it was really interesting that shot they did of him swimming through the water, getting to the surface, and what looked like monks looking down on him. And then initially, when he didn't quite make it, I almost took that as like he went to hell or something. Like he didn't make it to the good afterlife. In hindsight, it meant that he didn't die because he didn't quite make it to the monks, right? But there was a brief period where I was like, not only is he dead, he's in hell for being an incest guy. I was like, that's dark.
Look, I think it would have been better if he had died. I don't know why he came back to life. They signposted it too hard. It was a bit like the dream sequence when everyone woke up. It was like, kill him.
But also, why didn't he die? He drank the poison because he was sick.
And also, what did it tell us that he didn't die?
I did enjoy the general kind of almost Shakespearean comedy of errors of him being like, I'm going to poison everyone except Lachlan, and then Lachlan being the only one who gets poisoned. Like when he started making that shake, me and you were cackling.
We were like, that's some good, fun, twisty writing.
That's some fun writing. And her being like, we're going to let the dad sleep in. So we were like, so of course the dad's going to be the one to find him.
Yeah. Because I said, who's going to come out and scream when he's going to be on that patio deck? I assumed it was going to be the mum or something. Fun for it to be the dad. Fun for him to wake up immediately, see, the blender, realise what's happened. But I just think he should have died.
Well, speaking of committing to the bit, there was a moment where they were all stood around drinking that pina colada. And we were like, oh, damn, they're going to kill the whole family. And then at the last minute, he slapped out their hands. Part of me is like, I kind of wish they'd all died. They would have just been crazy if they'd all died.
I know. I think to take us so close to being there and rip it away from us. Yeah, I wanted them all to go. I really did. I think that would have been, whoa, they went there.
Yeah, maybe that would have been a lot of people dying maybe, but...
Hey, it's White Lotus.
On the topic of the family, Saxon, who became kind of one of my favourite characters, I think Patrick Schwarzenegger did a wonderful job.
Agreed.
That scene where he turns and sees Chelsea and Rick reuniting and he just kind of has tears in his eyes, like beautiful acting. Really interesting because you're like... He wants her, I think, but also he just wants that. He just wants love. He wants connection. And I think his journey was really interesting through this season. Would have maybe liked more of that. Like you say, it was kind of crazy we didn't see him react to Chelsea dying.
Crazy we didn't see him react to Chelsea dying, and crazy we didn't see him unfolding the news of, like he said, his whole life is work.
Yeah.
I would have loved to understand, have seen the conversation between him and his dad when he realised what had happened, and either like a mutual like, we can get through this, or what am I going to do, or don't worry. I kind of wanted just a tiny bit more just to understand like what this means for him now. I understood that he learned a lot about himself in Thailand, but I don't know, I don't feel like satisfied that I think he could go back and quite quickly be the exact same person who came to Thailand.
Maybe.
I think that's a very realistic, you go on a holiday, you go traveling for a couple of weeks, think you found yourself, and then you're back and he's like out at an LA club and he's, buy, sell, and he's very ruthless. I feel like those books, was it enough to change him? What was his plan moving forward?
It's a bit like with the dad, the dad getting that big finale where he's like, maybe family is the ultimate business of all and whatever. And also I think a little bit like reconnecting, they play that sort of Catholic choir, him reconnecting with faith and stuff, but he's still kind of screwed. The thing that I said to you that I thought was going to happen was I thought they were going to get the phones back and actually it had resolved itself. I thought he was going to like kill a family member and then get his phone back because he'd been without his phone for days.
True.
And then he's like, Tim, good news. You're in the clear. And he's like, oh, no, I've killed my family. But I think maybe that would have been a bit unrealistic.
Maybe a bit soap opera-y.
Yeah, that would have been a bit more like, he was your son.
Yeah. So after the Rick and Chelsea embrace, she said, think about the love you have now, not the love that you didn't have.
Yes.
And then?
Well, it was, I don't know why I didn't see it coming. Like usually when characters are like, everything's good, you're like, something bad's happening. But when they were sat together and she's like, we're going to be together forever. And he went, that's the plan. And it was a really sweet moment. And I don't know why. And I was just, and I knew that the hotel owner was coming back.
I could kind of see.
You've said from the beginning that you thought Chelsea was going to die.
I always thought Chelsea was going to die.
Is it because she kept making those lines?
I think it was heavily signposted that, bad things happen in threes. She said a lot of very obvious lines.
Even if it kills me,
even
stuff
if it
like
kills
that.
me. We had lots of things like that. I also think the type of character she is perfect to be killed because we really resonated with her. really connected with her. I mean, she was fantastic casting. She was a very kind, she's just one of those people who, God, we don't want Chelsea to die.
Yeah.
I just think that she was perfect. She was a perfect lamb to the slaughter. Her head was in the clouds, that she saw past all of Rick's bad qualities, and she was just all about love. And I think that sometimes that means you got to go. So I wasn't surprised when he turned around and I saw him looking at the floor. I was like, here we go.
Yeah.
I was like, she's done. After the donut scene at breakfast, I was like, she's down. I thought he was going to go for the guy. There was a slight moment, and I'm not just saying this, where I thought, I bet he's his real dad.
Really? I didn't see that coming.
I swear.
I thought that when they went for the initial meeting in the previous episode.
Yeah,
I thought maybe he'll be dad, but then they went a different route, and it went out of my head.
No, I thought that. I thought this when he was saying that speech. I thought he's his dad, isn't he?
What are you talking about when he went up to him at breakfast?
Yes,
and he was like, your dad was a piece of work.
Yeah. But when he was saying your mum's, I didn't think she was a liar as well. I was like, oh, here we go. It's his dad.
But it's interesting that he was saying like your dad was like a bad guy, and he's talking about himself. So it's not actually, even though he's being mean, it's not as mean as it initially appears. He's basically saying you've dodged a bullet by not having me as your dad.
Yeah. And then we had the scene, obviously the kind of big climax.
Tell you who didn't dodge a bullet. Him later.
Where he was carrying Chelsea. Where do you think he was carrying her to?
I guess just away. When it started going off, the guns, and he like grabbed her wrist and pulled her with him. I was like, don't bring her with you. Send her off.
Yeah.
There was some really wonderful acting from him, because when he was sitting there, and like bless Rick, because he tried to go to the therapist. And he begged her. He like tried to be a good guy. And she was like, just give me 1 hour. Come on. But you could see him. And the look on Walton Goggins' face, it was such good acting, because it wasn't rage. He wasn't like, oh, I got to kill that guy. It was almost the look of like an addict who knows the thing is bad for them and is so saddened by it, but has to have the thing.
Yeah.
It was such a look of like, when he said to Chelsea, like, get out of here, like there was no joy in his face that he gets to shoot this guy. It was just like complete resigned misery that I'm on this train that I can't get off.
But that scene, I think, where she was saying, please don't, and she was stood there, and it was genuinely the decision between her and doing the bad thing. I mean, he picked the bad thing.
He did, and he got her killed.
Please don't. Yeah. So, I mean, you say bless him. He did.
Oh, look, bless him mildly.
You've always been in his corner, I will say.
I think, not his corner, but he did, he tried. He vaguely tried. Do you know what I mean? He didn't kill the guy the first time. He tried to go to the therapist to get her to calm him down. And Blummin' Zion had to sit there instead and talk about his mum.
For a session he didn't even want to go to.
He didn't even need that. He could have just gone, he got 5 million quid. He can have as many sessions as he wants. But, you know, a little bit Rick tried. But then, of course, he took the bad option. And like Chelsea said in the previous episode, she's joy, he's pain, and one of us is going to win.
And then
Pain won.
Yeah, and she said lots of things about them living together forever. So
there was a small moment where I thought he was going to shoot the wife as well for some reason.
Yeah, I thought that. I thought there was a split second where I thought, fuck it all up.
This is for your 90s hits.
Yeah, for your crap movies.
Gaytok.
Yes.
He didn't dob in the Russians.
Nope.
Valentin said to him, if you report me, you're killing me. And Gaytok clearly was like, I don't think I have it in me to kill someone. He then killed someone with a gun.
Well, if I had someone shouting at my ear, shoot, and I don't know, maybe I would have shot.
That moment where...
It was so stressful.
It was stressful. That moment at the end where he's driving off and he's the bodyguard in the car, I could have used maybe a sad face close-up, because it's one of those, you've got everything you wanted, but at what cost kind of thing.
I totally agree. A close-up shot that tells us that he's either delighted that he's finally got everything he wants, or actually, as has been signposted, this is never what he wanted. He never had it in him to be a bodyguard. He's just pulled the trigger, and now he's in this role. Is he with Lisa? What's going on?
Well, the last scene is him as a bodyguard literally driving away from her. Yeah. Presumably, if he's going to be the bodyguard, he's now going to live in like Bangkok. She lives on the island. A small part of me did think, like, again, talking about Lisa being very famous.
Yes.
Would she do a kiss?
I agree.
Did you think this?
I thought the exact same thing. I think it's implied that they are together, but she wouldn't be able to kiss. Yeah,
they did like a loving hug, didn't they? And it felt like a bit of a compromise hug.
There was more that that they could have done, he could have kind of touched her face to show that they were like a couple.
Yes.
It felt very friendly, but maybe that's it. Maybe the thing is that he did all the things and he's still friend zoned. Is that the point?
Well, it wasn't clear enough. It should have either been a less intimate hug, or maybe we even needed a line.
A less intimate hug, or a like, oh, would you still want to go for dinner next week? And she's like, let me get back to you. Something like that.
Yeah.
I agree. It either needed to be a face touch or a very loving handhold or something.
My initial, it's funny that we both had the thought of like,
100%.
It's not that Lisa is a human being who can make choices, but when a person is that famous, the layers of teams and management and just it's crazy the amount of stuff that goes into a decision. Like, is she going to kiss someone? Because also someone that famous, they might go, maybe her first kiss on screen should be with someone really famous. Like, they think about these things to the nth degree.
I can't remember. I was watching an interview the other day with an actor who said they absolutely could not take a certain part. I can't remember what it was, but it was either like an accent or in a place, but there was no way that, that people do have these things that they can and can't do.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be surprised if maybe that's why we didn't see it.
It's so funny we both thought that.
But then again, it should have been more obvious what their relationship was.
I just think there was an open goal for some kind of final shot on Gaytok, just to see how he feels about that. Because like you said, he only wanted to be a bodyguard to impress Mook.
Yeah.
He's now not with Mook, and he's killed someone. I mean, like, I feel like there's a rich vein there for a bit of emotion from him, but he was just kind of sat in the car and just kind of looking a little enigmatic. I don't know.
All right, let's wrap it up then. So this was no one's favourite series, I fear.
Do you think?
I don't think.
I've seen some people online who claim it's their favourite of all.
Really?
I think, I've said it before, I think people have a weird memory of what season 1 was like. Season 1 was a lot more low key, I think, than people remember. Season 1 was just mostly people having conversations, and there was one little bit of action at the end. I think this has a lot more in common with season 1.
I think that the pacing just needed to be worked on. That for me, the pacing felt a little bit off this series. And it's not that I needed big things to happen throughout.
Yeah.
I feel like I just needed more. I needed to see more from these people and their endings.
Yes.
If I'm going to invest that much time, like you say, I wanted to know, was Gaytok happy with the outcome? And to not know that does leave you feeling a little bit disappointed.
Yeah, because there's like a deliberately ambiguous ending, and then there's kind of like a no ending. There's a difference between those things. I think I agree. You could have almost removed one of the slightly fillery middle episodes, pushed everything back, and then added one more episode after this to almost like a wrap up. Or I don't know. There was definitely 1 or 2 episodes in the middle that were very enjoyable, but where you're just kind of like going through the motions.
Yeah.
There's no, killing time.
Yeah, I think it's interesting what you say about a deliberately ambiguous ending and then just feeling like maybe things weren't wrapped up enough. And I feel like, we sit in camp 2 a little bit, where I just feel like, apart from the women whose story I feel quite satisfied with, everyone else I feel a little bit unsatisfied with.
You almost need that scene at the airport, which I think they did in both 1 and 2, where they were all at the airport at the end, and you just have a little bit of a check-in with how everyone's doing. They did a very brief check-in with everyone, but could have used a little bit more. The time that you were taking to show Sam Rockwell back at the temple, which we didn't really need. It's funny to see him, but you don't need that.
Yeah.
I'd rather have one shot of Saxon thinking about something, or I don't know. Yeah, look, I really liked this season.
I liked it too.
We love the White Lotus. To be clear, if we're covering a show, it's probably because we love it.
Yeah, I love it. And I think it had loads of strengths in it. And I think that we saw characters and dynamics that we haven't seen before that were very enjoyable to watch. I think we got new perspectives on the rich, which is hard to keep, reinventing the wheel. I think there was a lot of good. I think it was beautifully shot. I think that there was a lot of thought put into, down to where people stood and their clothing. And I think there was so much good about it. I think it had more issues than previous.
I guess we're grading on a curve, right? Because the quality of White Lotus is so high. Like the highs are so high and the lows are never that low.
No.
So it's like, when you're always getting A stars and A suddenly seems, but it's like, even at its quote unquote worst, it's always pretty exceptional.
Totally.
So to be clear to the people online who think we hate the show or whatever,
No.
it's a really good show. What do you think was any kind of overall message? Because there were loads of drops of stuff like there are different groups of people. You don't know if you're in the same group, but we're all working together. There was the whole thing about how we're all drops floating through the air and then we're all one big ocean. You know, he clearly was inspired by these kind of presumably Buddhist philosophies. Like there were all these kind of themes running through of like, we're not individuals, we're actually groups and stuff. But like, do you think any of that was actually borne out in the show? Or do you think that was all kind of like
it's like when
flavouring?
you've got an idea and you've tried to kind of map something around it.
Yeah.
I don't know that I felt that come through. Did you?
I guess if you look at the family, it was about the family. They're all individual and then having to come together-ish.
But did we see them come together in a way that felt satisfying at the end? It was just the dad saying, by the way, things are going to change. And they didn't even go, everything will be all right, Dad. He just said... It was the dad saying everything's going to be fine. Like no one, they were sat on that boat, the dad on one side, the kids on the other side.
Yeah.
Did we feel like we got that ending where they felt like a group? They were droplets coming together. I'm not sure that we did.
With the women, you got it. They ended up stronger together.
Yes.
That was droplets coming together. Valentin and the Russian guys, they just kind of had a pretty good season. They got away with it completely.
Sure.
It was kind of funny when we saw them just partying it up. It's like, okay, I guess they weren't really involved in the plot. I'm sure someone could really go through it with a fine-tooth comb and work out all the little sort of philosophical themes or whatever. But the main thing is, and I'll say it, rich people be crazy.
Exactly. Well, this has been an absolute delight. We have loved chit-chat and White Lotus with you. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you for talking it with me, Hannah.
Thank you for
your insights have been wonderful.
Thank you for talking. Your insights have been wonderful too.
This has been the
So
talk
you're
of the
going to say
Townsends.
thank you for talking with the Townsends.
Thank you for talking Townsend with me. And once again, listeners, we have an idea for our next series, but if you have any shows you'd love us to cover, please let us know.
Be in the DMs.
Whether or not we're going to do 2 at once,
TBC.
we'll see, because that's a lot. But The Apprentice continues. Please listen.
Yes.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.